Schmidt, and I'm a real believer in quality and operational excellence. My mission is to help people like you build quality systems that improve both your product and your customer's experience so that you'll be a believer too. In this series, I'm breaking down ISO 9001 element by element and line by line. Whether you're building a system from scratch, maintaining a system you already have, or maybe you're doing internal audits and just want to know more about the standard and the requirements within the standard. In each video, I give you one good reason to trust me. Today, we're going to be talking about non-conforming output. I've worked, as you know, with many different industries, both in the production of products and in the provision of services. And I've worked all along the supply chain. So where there are processes and where there is output, whatever type of output it is, there is the possibility of non-conformances. And so obviously, this being a quality standard and a quality system, we're going to have to talk about that at some point. So this is what we're going to get into today. It's very important that we understand and have a system for managing when the unthinkable occurs, when we have a non-conformance, that we have a really good discipline system of dealing with it and making that problem disappear. So let's jump right into the requirements at 8.7. 8.7.1, the organization shall ensure that outputs that do not conform to their requirements are identified and controlled to prevent their unintended use or delivery. So we have to, it's starting to introduce the idea, should there be non-conforming outputs, we have to identify them and control them. And so that would begin to say, isolate them immediately. The organization shall take appropriate action based on the nature of the nonconformity and its effect on the conformity of products and services. So it gives us the ability to decide what our reaction is going to be and what the impact is potentially on the product and service itself. This shall also apply to nonconforming products and services detected after delivery of products, during or after the provision of services. So this means at any time, not only nonconforming products that you discover in-house, but anywhere along the line, even post-delivery, we have to make sure that we take action should we become aware of a nonconformity. The organization shall deal with nonconforming outputs in one or more of the following ways. So this is a list. It doesn't mean you have to do every one of these steps every single time there's a nonconformity, but it should be dealing with it in one or more of the following. We can A, correction, correct the problem. B, segregation, containment, return, or suspension of provision of products and services. So we can segregate, meaning isolate the nonconforming output, contain, and that would mean anything that's in process. Potentially, if we found something at final inspection, we go upstream and make sure that we go all the way through. Or suspension of provision of products and services means stop, halt production. Just suspend it for a minute until we can get our arms around what the impact is of this nonconformance. The third one is informing the customer. That might be something you do. If it is a beginning of a particular lot or manufacturing run of something and the customer hasn't been exposed, you don't necessarily need to inform the customer. But if there is some suspicion that something might be coming their way or they might already have it, informing the customer would be appropriate, of course. And then finally, obtaining authorization for acceptance under concession. So there is an opportunity too, if your customer is willing to accept the product, even though it is outside the requirements, it might be something minor and it might be something they can live with. And so there is the ability to have them accepted under concession. Conformity to the requirements shall be verified when non-conforming outputs are corrected. So this is a really important thing, and I don't know that it's written clearly enough for everyone to understand what the expectation is. I'll say it again. Conformity to the requirements shall be verified when non-conforming outputs are corrected. So this is talking about rework. So if you have an output that you can correct, meaning rework it or redo it if it's a service, if there's some kind of a correction that you can do in that way, there's a step here required, conformity to the requirements shall be verified. And so what sometimes is missed is you might have your control process when your process goes through in process and then almost final and final. There might be inspection points along the way, and then you get it all done and you find that there's a non-conformance. The expectation is that whatever the correction is, that there be some verification step, or in essence, another inspection step, in which case, if we go back to that release of product, we need to verify after the rework or the redo, we need to verify after that rework, and that should include the signing off and that it does now meet the requirements. So it's just kind of, I think this particular requirement is just kind of a little too camouflaged for some. I myself have, as an employee of companies a long time ago, I've been tripped by this because I didn't really see it. It was there all along, but I didn't see it. And I've had times when we did rework and we didn't have records of the reinspection. And so I've had non-conformances I've had to respond to. And so I learned, you know, we learned a lot of things from third-party registrars, I think, about our quality system. So we'll talk about that when we get to internal audits. I love auditing. I think auditing is the greatest thing. I like to be audited. It is the best way to make your quality system better and better and better. But I digress. Let's get back to this particular requirement. 8.7.2, the organization shall retain documented information that A, describes the nonconformity, B, describes the actions taken, C, describes any concessions obtained, and E, identifies the authority deciding the action in respect of the nonconformity. So again, it's kind of repeating that process if there's rework, but even if there's not, like this might be scrapping the material, or it might be regrinding if it's like plastic, or it might be selling it to someone else, or it might be regrading it and just saying, well, it's non-conforming to this particular specification, but it meets a different specification. We might give it a different part number or specify it some other way. Whatever happens, there needs to be records. So if you have non-conformities, if you ever have anything go wrong, the expectation is you'll have a record that you realized the nonconformity existed, and you have a full record of exactly what happened all the way through until it was completely disposed of and finished. So that's the requirements for 8.7. That's pretty easy, and it's wrapping up all of the requirements of provision of products and services. So we're done making stuff for a minute. We're done providing services. We're gonna switch over to performance evaluation. Now that we have gone through, we're really starting to reach the home stretch now. We've gone through planning our system, documentation of our system, training, setting up processes, controlling our conditions, what happens if we have non-conforming product, and now we're gonna start talking about measuring the whole system overall. So that's next in element 9. And until then, keep improving.